The grand throne room of the Luminari Palace gleamed with an iridescent blue light that reflected off every polished surface, making Admiral Thorne squint as he dragged his gift forward. The chains binding the human's wrists clattered against the crystalline floor, echoing through the cavernous chamber. "Your Imperial Luminescence," Thorne announced with barely concealed disdain. "As requested by the Treaty of Proxima, I present this human specimen as tribute to your glorious reign." Queen Alara leaned forward on her floating throne, her silver-green skin catching the light in mesmerizing patterns. The spiral crown atop her head held back a cascade of deep crimson curls that seemed to move with a life of their own. Her six-fingered hand gestured lazily toward the human. "This is the best Earth could offer?" she asked, her voice melodic yet sharp. "He seems rather unremarkable." The human, Kai Tavares, kept his eyes downcast as protocol demanded, but his jaw tightened at the insult. He was tall for a human, with bronze skin and dark hair cropped close to his skull, wearing only the simple gray garments of a prisoner. "The human is called Kai Tavares," Admiral Thorne said. "He was chosen specifically for his linguistic abilities. He speaks 17 Earth languages and has already mastered the primary Luminari dialect." Alara rose from her throne, her flowing silver robes catching the light as she descended the crystal steps. The royal court watched in shock. The queen rarely approached lesser beings herself. "Look at me, human," she commanded. Kai raised his eyes slowly, revealing irises of such deep amber they appeared almost gold. Something shifted in the queen's expression as their eyes met, surprise, perhaps curiosity. "You understand our language?" she asked in perfect Luminari. "Yes, your luminescence," Kai replied in equally flawless Luminari, his voice deeper than she expected. "I have studied your culture extensively." Alara circled him, her 7-foot frame towering over his 6'1". "And what have you learned of us?" "That you value precision, efficiency, and hierarchy above all else," he answered carefully. "That emotions are considered a primitive evolutionary remnant, that art exists only to serve function." A murmur rippled through the court. No tribute had ever spoken so directly to their queen before. "And yet," Alara noted, "you say this with what humans call irony." For the first time, Kai's lips curved slightly. "Perhaps." Admiral Thorne stepped forward, alarmed. "Your luminescence, if the human offends, we can send him directly to the agricultural colonies." "No," Alara said, raising a hand to silence him. "He is interesting. I will keep this one in the palace." The court erupted in whispers. Humans were considered barely sentient by most Luminari standards, useful for labor but hardly palace material. "As you wish," Thorne replied stiffly, "though I must remind your luminescence that keeping a human so close is unprecedented." "Many things about my reign are unprecedented, Admiral," Alara replied coolly. She turned to her chief attendant. "Vex, prepare quarters for the human in the East Wing, and remove those chains, they offend my aesthetic sensibilities." As Vex hurried to obey, Alara leaned closer to Kai. "Why were you chosen?" she whispered, her breath cool against his ear. "The truth." Kai met her gaze steadily. "I refused to bow to your ambassador when he visited Earth. They thought sending me here would be both punishment and humiliation." Instead of anger, a spark of something like amusement flashed in her opalescent eyes. "Then we are both pawns in someone else's game," she murmured. "How intriguing." As Kai was led away, he felt the queen's gaze following him, curious, calculating, and somehow different from any Luminari he had encountered before. For the first time since his capture, he wondered if perhaps his sentence might not be the death sentence he'd expected. In her private chambers later that night, Queen Alara found herself unable to focus on state documents, her thoughts repeatedly returning to the strange human with eyes like twin suns and the inexplicable warmth she had felt in his presence. 2 lunar cycles had passed since Kai's arrival at the Luminari Palace, and already the whispers followed him everywhere. The palace staff, tall, elegant beings with their characteristic silver-green skin, would fall silent when he entered rooms, their opalescent eyes tracking his movements with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "The Queen's pet," they called him when they thought he couldn't hear. Kai had been given quarters in the East Wing as promised, not the dungeons he'd expected, but a suite of rooms with views of the twin moons that orbited the Luminari homeworld. His status remained ambiguous. He wore no chains, but neither was he free to leave. Tonight, as he had for the past 14 nights, Kai made his way to the Queen's private gardens. The guards no longer stopped him, having received standing orders from Alara herself. The garden glowed with bioluminescent plants that pulsed gently in rhythm with the planet's magnetic field. "You're late," came the Queen's melodic voice from beneath a canopy of glowing azure vines. "My apologies, Your Luminescence," Kai replied, approaching the stone bench where she sat. "Commander Dax required additional translation assistance with the Earth communications." Alara's crimson curls seemed to darken with her mood. "Commander Dax has his own translators. He said they lack my cultural nuance," Kai offered, taking his now customary seat beside her, a proximity that would scandalize the court if they witnessed it. The Queen plucked a luminous flower, its petals changing color at her touch. "And what did these communications reveal?" Kai hesitated. "Earth continues to protest my unlawful detention. They claim I was not part of the agreed tribute." "And were you?" Alara asked, her eyes studying him intently. "No," Kai admitted. "I was an afterthought, punishment for an offense against an official too prideful to accept that humans don't bow." A small smile played at the corners of Alara's mouth. "Your honesty continues to surprise me. Most beings lie to please their queen." "I'm not most beings," Kai said simply. "No," she agreed, "you are not." Their conversations had grown increasingly intimate over the past weeks. Tonight, as always, they began with matters of state, but inevitably drifted to more personal exchanges. Alara, Kai had discovered, possessed a curiosity about emotions that was forbidden in Luminari culture. "Explain to me again," she said, leaning slightly closer, "this human concept of falling in love. The metaphor suggests a loss of control, yet humans seek it actively." "Because the falling isn't frightening when you trust someone will catch you," Kai explained. "How can you ever be certain they will?" "You can't," he admitted. "That's what makes it brave." High Counselor Vrex found them there an hour later, his shocked expression barely concealed as he delivered urgent news about border skirmishes. As he departed, his final glance at Kai contained unmistakable warning. "Your council disapproves of our conversations," Kai observed after Vrex left. "My council disapproves of many things," Alara replied dismissively. "They believe humans too governed by emotion to offer useful insight." "And what do you believe?" The Queen's long fingers brushed against his briefly, the first time she had voluntarily touched him. The sensation sent an unexpected warmth through his body. "I believe," she said carefully, "that perhaps my people's avoidance of emotion has cost us something essential." In the silver light of the twin moons, her skin seemed to pulse with subtle patterns, a physiological response Kai had never witnessed in any luminari before. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Tomorrow there is a diplomatic reception. You will attend as my personal advisor." Kai's eyebrows rose. "The court will object." "Let them," Alara said, rising from the bench with fluid grace. "It's time the Luminari learned that different doesn't mean inferior." As she glided away, Kai remained in the garden, contemplating how quickly his status had changed, and the dangerous territory into which they were heading. For the first time since his capture, he found himself not planning escape, but anticipating tomorrow with something dangerously close to hope. The Grand Hall blazed with ceremonial light during the Festival of Celestial Alignment, an event held once every 17 years when all 7 moons of the Luminari system formed a perfect line in the night sky. Dignitaries from 12 allied worlds mingled beneath the transparent dome ceiling, all eyes occasionally drifting upward to check the progress of the astronomical event. All eyes, that is, except those of Prince Jaltsar from the neighboring Christian Empire, whose focus remained fixed on Kai with undisguised contempt. "A human advisor," he remarked loudly to Queen Alara, his violet skin flushing darker with indignation. "Has the mighty Luminari Empire fallen so far as to take counsel from lesser species?" Alara, resplendent in robes that captured and refracted light in hypnotic patterns, regarded him coolly. "Intelligence recognizes intelligence across all forms, Prince Jaltsar. Perhaps that explains your confusion." A ripple of shocked murmurs spread through the assembled guests. Kai, standing at Alara's right hand in formal attire designed specifically for him, maintained a diplomatic expression despite his inner satisfaction at the Queen's defense. The human should be removed, Jaltsar insisted. His presence diminishes this sacred occasion. The human, Alara replied, emphasizing each word, has a name, and Kai stays at my side. The confrontation was interrupted by the ceremonial chimes announcing the alignment's peak. The gathered dignitaries moved toward the observation platforms, but Alara caught Kai's wrist with surprising strength. "Not there," she whispered, guiding him toward a concealed doorway behind the throne. They ascended a spiraling crystal staircase that led to a private observation tower. Below, the diplomatic gathering continued, but here they were alone, surrounded by panoramic views of the converging moons. "You defended me," Kai said quietly. "That will have consequences." "Everything has consequences," Alara replied, her crimson curls seeming to float in the ambient energy field that surrounded them. "I am tired of calculating each action based on political expediency." The light from the aligned moons bathed them both in silver radiance. Kai noticed that the patterns beneath Alara's skin pulsed more rapidly than usual. "In my culture," he said, "legends say that vows made during celestial alignments are unbreakable." "In mine," she replied, stepping closer, "it is believed that during the alignment one can see beyond conventional limitations." Her hand rose to touch his face, a gesture so intimate that had any court official witnessed it, they would have demanded immediate sanction. "What do you see, Alara?" he asked, using her name without title for the first time. "I see possibility," she whispered. The kiss that followed defied every protocol, every boundary between their species. Her lips were cooler than human temperature, but the electricity between them burned hot enough to make the air around them shimmer with energy. When they finally separated, the patterns beneath her skin were moving in chaotic, brilliant formations, the luminary equivalent of blushing. "That was," she began. "Treason according to your laws," Kai finished for her. "Then let me be a traitor," Alara said fiercely. "These past months with you have taught me more about living than 7 decades on the throne." They remained in the tower until the moons began to drift apart, their hands entwined, speaking in whispers about worlds of possibility neither had dared imagine before. When they finally returned to the Grand Hall, the celebration was ending, but the glances exchanged between them carried the weight of a beginning. Neither noticed High Counselor Vrex watching from the shadows, his face grim as he activated his communication device to summon an emergency council meeting. "The Queen has been compromised," he murmured into the device. "The human's influence must be terminated."